Climate change is one of the most pressing issues of our time. Increasing temperatures, rising sea levels, and extreme weather events are growing ever more common. What can we do about climate change? Innovative business models for clean energy and climate adaptation are a big part of the solution. Plenty of entrepreneurs have great ideas on how they can make an impact. However, it can be challenging to find the investment to get their projects off the ground or to grow their businesses. That's where Pfan comes in. The Private Financing Advisory Network is a global network of climate and clean energy financing professionals, offering free business coaching and investment facilitation to projects and businesses in developing countries, bridging the gap between investors and developers. The Pfan journey begins with an entrepreneur submitting a project proposal, detailing their investment needs. We select high potential projects or businesses and map a pathway to investment. The next step, business coaching, is at the heart of Pfan. We appoint an expert consultant from our network to provide targeted and unbiased one-on-one advice to help entrepreneurs refine their business plans and financial models, something which plays a key role in attracting financing. Once entrepreneurs are ready, we introduce them to suitable investors and, if necessary, provide further support to help make the deal happen. Pfan is funded by our donors, enabling us to provide these services for free. If you're an entrepreneur developing a project or scaling up an existing business in clean energy or climate adaptation, a consultant who wants to share your expertise, or an investor looking to make an impact, we would love to hear from you. Let's work together in creating a cleaner, greener planet where businesses are part of the solution.
Good morning, everyone. Happy April Fool's Day. My name is Nancy Nguyen, and I serve as the network manager for Pfan activities in Asia. Pfan, or Private Financing Advisory Network, is a global network of climate and clean energy financing experts, which offers free business coaching and investment facilitation to entrepreneurs developing climate and clean energy projects in emerging markets. It's my pleasure to be a MC for this webinar, Investment Opportunities for Women-Led Climate and Clean Energy Businesses, a joint event by Pfan and the Empower Project to promote awareness of gender integration in climate resilience and clean energy, to link empowers as well as other women entrepreneurs, financial institutions, private sectors, and investors on scaling up investment for women in renewable energy sector. On behalf of the organization team, I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. We hope you will learn a lot, as we have a great lineup prepared for you, and we'll believe it will be fruitful and engaging for all involved. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing questions in the Q&A box of the control panel under your screen, computer screen. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect all your questions and address them as many as we can. We will also save all the questions and answers today and send them to you as part of the post-event report. To begin the webinar, we are pleased to have Peter Story, who is Pfan Global Coordinator, to deliver the opening remarks. Peter has been with Pfan since its inception in 2006. Peter is a financing professional specialized in developing countries and transition economy with significant expertise in renewable energy and other infrastructure sectors. So please, Peter.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you and looking forward to this really insightful and interesting event. I'm the global coordinator of Pfan, have been with the organization since its inception in 2008, and just wanted to give you a brief introduction to the organization and to our work and thinking around gender to set up today's meeting. So as I think most of you know, Pfan is a project preparation facility. We work in developing countries to mobilize investment into clean energy and climate projects. As I just mentioned, we've been in operation since about 2008. Over that time, we've helped over 127 companies raise somewhere in the region of $1.9 billion of investment. Those projects and companies have established just about 1 gigawatt of clean generation capacity, and the projects that are in commission and operation are mitigating about 4 million tons of carbon equivalent on an annual basis. Our current pipeline is around 250 projects. We work across Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, Eastern Europe, and the Pacific. I suppose what I really want to emphasize that this is a really successful model. It's tried and tested, built on a really sound technology and methodology. And Peter Dupont will be explaining a little bit more about that later on in this morning's meeting. Over the last years, Nancy has already indicated that Pfan as an organization has been embedding and mainstreaming gender into pretty much every aspect of our operation and activity. We started where many other people start. We started with a number of gender calls targeting women-led and women-involved businesses and projects, specifically in West Africa and Asia. And more recently, we've been developing and implementing an operation-wide gender strategy, which involves sensitization of all our staff and throughout the whole network, trainings, and more specifically looking at ways in which we can really get much more gender balance into the ways that we conduct our business. So really going quite deep into that. Why are we doing this, you might ask? Well, I think some of it's obvious. I think we all recognize in this meeting today that women are disproportionately affected by polluting energy services. On the other hand, they are the principal beneficiary, or can be the principal beneficiary, of clean and renewable energy technologies. I think we all recognize that women are more severely affected by climate change because of their social roles and positions, and unfortunately because of discrimination. We also see, and this is coming to the real nub of what we do at Pfan, but we have seen, and I think there's a lot of research and study out there at the moment that really enforces the fact that women are underrepresented in management teams and governance teams. And unfortunately as well, we see that women-led management teams are less successful at raising funding than all male teams. So I think the differential is about 4 or 5 times. And on average, a woman-led team will only raise 16,000K, whereas on average, a man-led team will raise about 61K of investment, according to some studies that are out there. More importantly, and this is the real message I think we want to leave with you today, is there is a really strong proactive business case to be made for investing in gender balance. And that's why Pfan is doing it. Some figures to back that statement up. A gender diverse workplace can lead to higher profits. And according to Gallup and studies done by Accenture in 2019, a gender diverse workplace can lead to 19% higher profits. A more equal workplace culture can increase a company's innovation levels by 6 times. And there are some studies out there, again, by Gallup, Accenture, and the ILO that indicate that if gender parity were achieved across the whole workforce, GDPs in some countries would rise by 34%. So these are really strong arguments, we think, for making sure that gender is at the root and the heart of our business as Pfan. As a response to this, recently we've been looking at something called gender lens investment. This is a somewhat new but rapidly growing movement, which is proven to lead to enhanced customer centricity, stronger businesses, more effective marketing, and higher returns, improved performance. What does it mean? It means really embedding gender balance into our investment decisions, actually focusing our investment actively on women, and making sure that the companies, the partners, and all the stakeholders that we work with as an organization are looking to do the same. So just to leave you, I would like to sum up by saying that as an organization, Pfan really recognizes our responsibility and the opportunity to contribute to achieving gender equality and the empowerment of women. That's why this event is so important today. Thank you in advance to the Pfan Asia team, to UNEP Empower and Fahan for joining us and supporting this journey. And what I really look forward to is receiving many proposals from women-led entrepreneurs and companies over the next weeks and months that we can work with to really reinforce their gender-balanced investment strategies and get better investment results for them. Nancy, back to you, and I wish everybody a good meeting.
Thank you, Peter, for such wonderful remarks. Today, we also have Mosaharu Alam to join us in this welcome remark session. Mosaharu is the regional coordinator of climate change sub-program for Asia and the Pacific at the United Nations Environment Program. He provides leadership, coordinates the implementation, facilitate and lead resource mobilization, and support the implementation of the program. Please join me to welcome Mosaharu.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of United Nations Environment Program, please allow me also to add my words of welcome to this first webinar on the investment opportunities for women-led climate and clean energy businesses. This event is the part of the partnership between Pfan and the United Nations Environment Program as we work towards our shared goal of building climate resilience by providing women entrepreneurs with access to financing for their renewable energy enterprises. Thank you, Peter, for talking about the activities of the Pfan and its effort in terms of mainstreaming gender into the entire business of Pfan, and also highlighting the gender lens investment, which is very important to build the resilience of the vulnerable community. And then thank you for mentioning the disparity that prevails. Supporting the vulnerable women and building their resilience now became more important in the context of the sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, which obviously has brought many unprecedented challenges, and among many others, to sustaining the livelihood, securing the human health and the well-being, and also food security. Dear participants, this is also well recognized that existing gender inequalities make it hard for women to secure investment for their businesses. Women have been seen as too risky of an investment and a vulnerable group. Through this, the CEDA supported the Empower project, which you will be hearing a lot more, which stands for the Women for Climate Resilient Societies. What we are trying to see how can we consider the women as agent of change and changing the narrative from the vulnerability to a resilient group. UNEP and UN Women are jointly investing and implementing its effort to this project and covering several areas such as the policies, the planning, the technology innovation, access to finance, and also actual demonstration of the different technologies and the business model on the ground. But it's in a very limited scale. UNEP through this Empower project is also working in six with the six local partners in 3 countries in Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam for women to establish and scale up their renewable energy businesses. Currently, we are supporting more than 70 micro entrepreneurs and the women entrepreneurs in these 3 countries. Further, based on the country circumstances, which obviously varied by the countries as well as the communities that we are working, as well as the local entrepreneurs that we are working. The Empower project has identified several technologies which are low risk, require low investment, but has high potential for scaling up. The technologies, which is the medium risk and the high risk, and my colleague Ofbarimita will be talking more about the projects. Recent announcement of the several countries in Asia and the Pacific to become the carbon neutral by the 2050 and the 2060, and progress made so far under the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement and make the market mechanism provide an important signal to the private sector and the investor that investing in renewable energy, which may be very competitive right now, but will become more competitive and attractive in future. For the women entrepreneurs, this webinar is also a unique opportunity to learn from each other experiences in developing and running the renewable energy enterprises. I hope this webinar will able to generate more interest and will bring different stakeholders and the network together to collectively advance in women entrepreneurs development and renewable energy. We are looking forward to work with Pfan and explore the possibility of scaling up in climate change resilience and renewable energy investment in future. Thank you, and I wish you all a productive and rewarding experiences ahead. Thank you, Nancy, over to you.
Thank you, Mosaharu, for your remarks. We also honored to have Fahan to be our scene setter for this webinar. Fahan is a social entrepreneur, business personality, activist, and development expert analyst. She is the co-founder of Bursk Foundation and currently works as the Global Strategic Development Advisor. She's a member of UN Secretary General's panel on women's economic empowerment. Fahan is known for creating awareness on energy conservation and female empowerment in Pakistan. Fahan is currently acting as Pfan advisor to help Pfan launch the Pakistan Private Sector Energy Project with the funding from U.S. Agency for International Development. So please join me to welcome Fahan. Over to you, Fahan.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Good morning, everybody. This is Fahan from Pakistan, and it's a pleasure for me to be here because the subject of creating the nexus between women's economic empowerment and access to energy is very close to my heart. Why? Because I have been lucky enough to go through the journey, to go through the process like a woman energy entrepreneur, like many of you in the audience. And I have been able to experience the challenges and have had the journey of about a decade of being a practitioner and a CEO of 2 energy-based companies, converting those challenges into opportunities. So I would just like to narrate from my experience in terms of, this is back in 2006 when I'm a young female entrepreneur in Pakistan, setting up 2 companies in the energy space in a highly male-dominated sector. Many of you female entrepreneurs would understand how in countries like Pakistan or India, and Neetu's here as well, a woman setting up an energy company is entering into an extremely male-dominated space, and that too at a very young age, where no matter which room I walked in, no matter which meeting I attended, no matter which board I sat in, I was the only woman in a room full of men. And not just men twice and thrice my age, which even made it even more difficult. There were many times, both the companies that I was leading, one was working on solar energy solutions for rural villages, 43% of Pakistan is off-grid. So Baksh Foundation was developing innovative solar energy solutions for rural villages, off-grid villages of Pakistan, while Baksh Energy was Pakistan's first energy services company, ESCO, working on commercial solar solutions, on solar IPPs. So I am sitting there negotiating with governments, with the private sector, with development organizations, with communities, usually mostly being the only woman in a room full of men. There were many times when one thought that we will not be able to make it. There were many times when one thought, this is going to be too tough. How will I stand against all these men twice and thrice my age? How will I prove myself as a serious professional in the energy space and conquer, technically, professionally, this world that I'm in? There were many times when I would decide to give up and move back because and now we still have some energy professionals. At that time, this is back in 2006 and 7, there was literally nobody else in the room. There is still the case in many meetings and conferences I still attend, and we need to change this paradigm shift now. Now, I would like to share this one incident that changed my perspective. And when my perspective changed, everything changed for me. I went to this delegation with DNEDA, Denmark Business Association, to Denmark, with 10 energy companies from Pakistan and 10 energy companies from Denmark, going together on a waste to energy mission. When I went to Denmark, I realized that I was still the only woman in the room. So it was not just a problem for Pakistan, it was a global problem. Having low and minimum female representation was not just an issue that I was facing because I was from Pakistan, it was a global problem. And I also realized that being the only woman in that delegation, when we were traveling around Denmark in this minivan with 20 people, one woman and 19 men, I was lucky enough to sit next to the driver, be very comfortable, while all the men were squeezed at the back. And I thought to myself, and I laughed to myself, that I'm sitting so comfortably in the front while all the men are squeezed at the back because I'm the only woman in this delegation. And just as a joke, it changed my perspective. It changed my perspective that being the only woman around, being very few of us, it's actually our strength, not our weakness. And trust me, when I changed that perspective, everything started changing for me. Now being the only woman in that room, now being the only woman on that board, on that table, actually became my strength rather than my weakness. And I started working on my professional competence, hiring the best engineers, learning from them, excelling in my energy competence, and keeping my gender and age aside, which led me to becoming the first future energy leader from Pakistan, which led me to becoming the fourth Forbes 30 under 30 social entrepreneur from Pakistan, twice in 2015 and in 2016, and the journey just changed. So my first message to all the young women entrepreneurs hearing me right now, being a practitioner, is to realize that being the only woman in this industry or being the only woman in a room or on a board table or on a meeting is actually your strength rather than your weakness. And when you're going to change this perspective, you will see how the paradigm shift happens in the industry itself. So this was my first go-to. Now, when I became comfortable being this only female energy practitioner, creating innovative projects and practices for women energy entrepreneurs, I realized that there's so much we can do for other women. And with that, we launched multiple innovations in the rural space and the urban space for other women in energy entrepreneurs, further excelling the momentum, further creating the ripple effect, getting more and more women to join this energy movement, because we realized that when you create this nexus between women's empowerment and access to energy or clean energy, it's extremely powerful. Lots of projects that I launched became international best practices. Many of you might know the Lighting a Million Lives project that I launched for rural villages and women in rural villages, creating women energy entrepreneurs, which led to not just environmental gains and economic gains, but social impacts, multiple social impacts. In the urban space, we launched networks like Women in Energy, which has now become a very famous network and a platform for energy professionals, female energy professionals, to come together, support each other on the demand side, supply side, create a collective voice and a collective agency. With all of these fantastic initiatives happening in the rural space and the energy space, we still realize that it's still a niche. Having women energy professionals, the sector is still a niche. However, there is more and more demand now. There's more and more demand of clean climate businesses. There's more and more demand for clean energy businesses. And women have an equal opportunity and an equal share to establish their mark in these businesses. However, being a practitioner, being an advisor, being a policymaker, I realize the challenges that women entrepreneurs go through, having experienced them myself. from lack of capacity building to lack of market linkages to lack of technical capacity, most importantly, to lack of access to finance. And it's a pleasure for me to get to know projects like PFAN and Empower, which are now these platforms where women energy entrepreneurs can officially come to the table, get support for capacity building, for incubation, and finally for access to finance. With this, I would like to share that it is my message to all the young women energy entrepreneurs listening to us right now. Being a woman in the energy sector today as well is your strength rather than your weakness. Wherever you find there are challenges, be it access to finance or be it capacity building, reach out for help. And with projects like Empower and PFAN, we've got that help sorted. So I would wishing you all the best. And I feel in the next 5 to 10 years with such platforms, there will be many more success stories of young entrepreneurs bidding from around the world. There will be many more success stories with many more Fiza Farhans winning awards, creating international best practices, and creating room for more and more women energy entrepreneurs. Because I feel together, this is a very, very impactful model. So thank you so much for having me here. I'll be very happy to answer any questions now or later on Twitter from my personal journey as a practitioner or from my work now as an advisor. But I wish you all a very, very fun and fantastic webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fiza, for such a powerful and aspirational message. So that's conclude our welcome and scene setting remarks. Now we move to the second session of the webinar today, where we provide you in more details on how PFAN and the Empower projects works. So we have Parimita Mohanty, who works for the UN Environment Program as their Program Management Officer, Renewable Energy in the UNEP Office for Asia and the Pacific. Parimita is overseeing the implementation of the Empower project, a joint initiative by UN Women and UN Environment Program with the financial support from the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency. Parimita has been recognized as one of the world's 100 most influential people in gender policy for 2021 by Politico. So Parimita will provide the introduction about Empower, what it is and how it works. So join me to welcome Parimita.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Nancy, for this introduction. I will present on behalf of Empower team and my colleagues Inkar from UN Women and Annette from UN EP is also here. So it's a presentation prepared by the whole team. So Empower, it's a joint project as mentioned by Babu. It's a joint project between UN Women and UNEP and funded by CEDA. And it's a project for 5 years. And the project will end in 2022. However, the whole Empower project is quite big, and I will not touch upon the entire gamut of Empower project, and I will focus on a very specific component within Empower, which talks about renewable energy, climate resilience, and women entrepreneurship, which is mainly managed by UNEP. So, so my focus would be on that. Now, which are the Empower countries? So basically, we are working on 3 countries, that's Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Cambodia, and with 6 national implementing partners. However, we have a regional component which focus on knowledge sharing and capacity building, and we are focusing on Southeast Asia and South Asia for that matter. And if we see the Empower's contribution in these 3 countries, where are we working? Which are the pillar where we work? We work on policy and planning. We work on access to finance, capacity building and knowledge sharing, and on the ground implementation. And we work with almost all the different kind of stakeholders responsible for implementing women entrepreneurship through renewable energy in these countries. So we work with financing institutions, we work with line ministries, with subnational governments, with local governments, as well as with the community. That's the most important and relevant component within Empower, and
Barimita,
we're focusing much
excuse me.
more on that. Okay, so this is what we are currently doing, and I will just touch upon these things in my subsequent slides. And if we see, where are we at this moment? We have done number of scoping studies, pre-feasibility and feasibility studies, and identified those potential enterprise and entrepreneurs in all these three countries, and also identify those climate resilient livelihood options. So you can see number of photographs here. That's where our entrepreneurs are. And these are the photos from our Empower sites. And if you see in Cambodia, we have number of livelihood options as listed here. And for example, chicken incubation, water pumping, and clean water supply. And similarly in Vietnam, we have solar drying, we have cold storage, we have solar ecotourism center, and of course we have number of renewable energy retail enterprise. And if we come to Bangladesh, it's a very interesting story in Bangladesh, and where we are supporting 12 enterprise, but few of those enterprises where the solar irrigation power plant already exists, and we just support the livelihood options by supporting or catering the extra or additional energy available with the solar power plant. But we are also supporting around 274 kilowatt peak of solar PV for irrigation system through the co-financing of Empower grant with IDCOL. So these are few of the examples, what you can see, and few of the photos from the project site from Bangladesh. So just in terms of number, it's basically, if you see, we have 75 interventions already identified and business plans prepared. And we have identified more than 6 climate resilient technology options in all these countries. We are able to provide skill sets and training to 134 women from 77 enterprises. And these numbers are the current number, and we are targeting to have more number of women to be included in this training and skill sets development program. But most importantly, we have also worked with subnational government and come out with provincial action plan and investment plan, and include the sections on renewable energy and women entrepreneurship. That means what? That means the national budget, when that budget would be prepared, there is a possibility of getting more funds for this kind of interventions in future. That means even after the exit of Empower, the sustainability of this kind of project and scaling up of this kind of projects probability is higher. And in addition to all those things, we are also able to generate somewhere around $265,000 as a co-financing for implementation. This is besides Empower own funds or grants, which is used for risk guaranteed fund, or maybe to reduce the interest, or use as the interest subsidy. So this is the way we use the Empower grant and was able to leverage out this co-financing. So these are few of the numbers what we just wanted to bring it here, but we are still working on this, and we will definitely come out with more findings from the ground when the actual implementation on the ground will start. And we are expecting that the implementation will be completed by December of this year. And this is my last slide, which basically talks about various business models and business plans and the kind of enterprise that what we have. And we are trying to put those enterprise in different strata or categories, but with the end objective is that we will provide them the facilitating options, enabling options, so that they can sustain and they can expand in their businesses. So just to move through this ladder and go to the maximum or to the peak of this enterprise is something what we are targeting. With this, I will stop here. Thank you so very much to all of you. But I would also like to add that, and we know that number of entrepreneurs from Empower Project has also joined this webinar. And interestingly, there is maybe there are 3-4 different focal points where they are assembling and they are listening this webinar very interestingly. So total 44 potential entrepreneur from Empower has already joined this webinar. But besides that, there are so many other entrepreneurs from the region. So I wish them all the best for their future endeavor, and looking forward for a more stronger discussions. With this, I will stop here. And thank you so very much. Over to you, Nancy.
Thank you, Parimita. So next up, we will have Peter Dupont to talk about what is Pfan, how it works. So Peter Dupont, who is a Pfan Asia Regional Coordinator. Peter has more than 30 years of experience developing sustainable energy and climate programs in the US and Asia. He has carried out assignments related to the design, implementation, and evaluation of clean energy policy and plans, energy and climate finance, and climate change programs. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and hello to everyone today who got up early to join the webinar. And I'd like to thank Empower for their cooperation. And I'm going to pick up where Parimita left off on the chart showing the growth trajectory of the companies. It's fantastic to know that there are 44 entrepreneurs in different locations today listening in from Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam. The next time we will figure out a way to live stream a picture of them so we can feel more connected as a community. So I'm going to just spend about 5 minutes introducing you to Pfan, building on what Peter Story started, the story that Peter Story started to tell earlier. Pfan is a global network with more than 130 climate, energy, and financing experts who provide coaching services. And you can see the regions we cover. I oversee the region for Southeast Asia and South Asia. We are quite busy in this region, and we are about to start recruiting a regional coordinator for South Asia, so we have more focus there. And so that's a good thing. So the problem we address is the missing middle. And the way I describe it is Pfan goes out to the forest. We look for trees with fruit. We find the best fruit. We polish it, and we put it on a silver platter for investors. That's the missing middle. It's getting the projects on the left side of this chart to investors on the right side of the chart. And you can see some of the barriers faced on both sides. I should say that we mostly are the champions and work for the project developers. That said, sometimes we increasingly look at what investors are looking for, their appetites, and then work backwards to find pipelines of projects for them. Okay, Pfan would not exist without its donors who have been wonderful and very supportive over the years. You can see across the bottom, the Swedish government, the Australian government, the US government, Norway, Japan, and Germany. And there's an initiative called the Kigali Initiative, which focuses on energy efficient and low carbon cooling. We had a webinar on that last Friday with showcasing businesses in cold chain and efficient cooling. So we essentially provide free, quote unquote, free coaching for entrepreneurs. The coaching is not actually free because the donor funding that we get is used to pay for the cost the coaches are providing the advisory services, but it's free to the project developers. Once we get to a stage where projects are being pitched to investors, the project developer and the coach develop a success fee arrangement, and we work through, very importantly, through a network of investment partners and network partners. We'll hear from a couple of them today in the panel discussion. The network is hosted by UNIDO. Over the first 8 years, Peter Story mentioned it started in 2008. It was a conglomeration of different USAID programs and support from METI in Japan. It's now been sort of professionalized, and as Peter said, the sort of technology and process for providing this coaching efficiently with low overhead has really been much further developed. Peter mentioned the track record, so I won't linger here. Just to say we're about to cross the threshold of $2 billion of financing raised. I'll just make a point here, and the next two slides after this are going to talk about the type of projects with a breakdown. So Nancy, you came on a little bit early, I think, or maybe I started my timer slowly. I got about 2 minutes left, a minute and a half. So we have expanded beyond clean energy programs into programs that work in the area of climate adaptation and climate resilience. So this is a newer area for us, and we are working hard to develop more projects in the pipeline. This is our pipeline, and you can see that most of the projects of these projects in Asia, which is about 117 in our pipeline, are energy related, but a number of them are adaptation related, energy efficiency, but we reflect the market. We don't determine in advance what type of projects we will coach. This project, this chart shows that we're really working mainly with small and medium project developers who are looking for $1 to $5 million for a scale-up investment, many of them looking for their first seed investment, maybe less than $1 million. We go up to 50 million, and in some cases go more than 50 million in terms of the size of projects. So with that, here's how you can participate. You can apply. If you have a project that has a business plan and a financial model, you can apply. And the next deadline is May 2021. We do not provide financing, we provide coaching. If you're an investor, and you'll hear from some investors in the panel later, you can join as a partner. And if you're a stakeholder, you can also join as a partner and help us get out the word. And you know, Empower is a network partner. So Nancy, thank you for your patience. And I'm going to pass it back to you, but these slides will be available. I'd like to recognize Nagaraja Rao, who is our head of investment facilitation, and all the work Nancy did in putting this webinar together. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Peter. So that wrap up the second session of the webinar today. Now I'd like to bring you to the next session of the event that will give you an opportunity to interact with Pfan developers and investors. So this session will be moderated by Peter Dupont. Joining Peter on the panel are Achara Pumi, Managing Director of PAC Corporation Thailand, Neetu Goel, Founder and CEO of iTruson Energy Solution in India, Robert Craybill, CIO of Impact Investment Exchange, Starlin Sharma, Co-Founder and Managing Partners and Green Earth in India. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask Starlene to put her video on. And so we're going to start the panel now. Okay, this is fantastic. I'm really excited. And so just to set this up, we've heard that gender inclusion, as Fiza said, is a niche, but we need to move beyond it being a niche. We heard from Fiza and also from Peter's story that it's good business. We heard some amazing statistics on how gender diversity and gender inclusion can help make businesses more sustainable, more profitable. And I'd also like to say, many of you may have attended the Asia Clean Energy Forum. I've been working with ADB to put that event on for 16 years, and I'm sort of ashamed to admit this, but 2 or 3 years ago, we thought we made great progress by having no manel. I mean, who knows what a manel is? Manel is a male-only panel. And what a freaking low bar. I mean, it's ridiculous that we have to have rules like that to say no manels. So maybe we should have, I don't know what the word is, we should kick Robert off and just have a women-only panel. But Robert has some interesting things to say. My point being that no manels is too low a bar. We have some people here to inspire us. We're gonna do a quick round of introductions with perspectives of about 3 minutes each. And then please, if you're in the audience, submit your questions. You can type them into the Q&A. So I'll start with Achara Pumi. You're Thai, and you've built up a business based on innovation in air conditioning, including the insight that waste heat from air conditioners can be used to provide water heating. You recently were featured in a video with Pfan on how Pfan helped you to strategically develop your business. Now, I'm not talking, I don't want you to necessarily say great things about Pfan, you're welcome to, but really the question I have I'd like you to discuss is, can you describe your perspective as a woman entrepreneur breaking into the appliance and energy business in Thailand?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Peter, for your introduction. I would like to add a bit about my journey before I have been selected to join Pfan in year 2018. At that time, I won the Global Clean Tech Innovation Program Award supported by UNIDO. And because of that beginning, we have many support from Pfan in growing business, broaden my network and opportunity, and also investment in Thailand. Right now, during COVID-19 pandemic situation, we still have grow revenue in last year and now expanding the business not only in Thailand but international market. In Thailand, for the research, they will only have 30% of women management level positioning in position or women entrepreneur. We have no research yet about how many percentage of women-led clean tech or clean energy business in a country, but I think the percentage may not more than 10% because of the industry need the specialized knowledge, the technical skill, and in Thailand, most of Thai people may not keen on in this field, and we have high investment costs and a lot of pressure to doing this business. So in Thailand, I think, in fact, there is no limitation to doing a business as a woman in the perspective of government support or private sector and social acceptance. But, and maybe because of Thailand is relatively open and the support in economics and social issue is developing for a long time. To be an women entrepreneur, especially in clean tech and clean energy business, I see a lot of opportunity because of women-led business. We have not much here in Thailand. As Visa said, it is the strength, not the weakness. Government support a lot on women entrepreneur, and it is very interested, the media or the government to support this kind of business, making a scope of interview or making them as a showcase. So I think when we're doing this kind of business, energy business or climate related business, in the social point of view in Thailand, they admire a lot of this kind of entrepreneur. And it is very, I think, distinguished from any other player in the industry. So I think in Thailand, we're quite really lucky that male or female entrepreneur, they have no obstacles
to be succeed, we are quite fair in the gender, male, female. We can do this. It depends on our capabilities, our knowledge, or our experiences to do this kind of business, much more than gender. And this is my perspective for Thailand ecosystem to support clean tech and clean energy business, especially for women. Thank you.
No, that's super interesting. So you're saying really there aren't that many structural barriers that if you are willing and build up your own capacity, you can break through. So thank you for that. Just so to let our participants know, what other markets are you moving into besides Thailand? Because you mentioned you're moving outside of Thailand.
Yeah, right now we are in Maldives and in the Asian country, Malaysia, Singapore, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos.
Great, thank you so much. I'd like to now move on to Nitu Goel. And so you're based in Mumbai, and you've built up one of the largest solar rooftop companies in India, which itself is one of the largest solar rooftop markets in the world. The field is completely dominated by male businesses. Can you briefly describe your journey and how you turned your weakness into a strength, to use Fiza's word, but some of the hurdles you faced and how you sort of made it happen? Nitu. You're muted. We want to hear you. We really do.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. Good morning to everyone. And I'm very glad to be part of this network where we have Empower and Pfan, and which is trying to, kind of bridge this gap. And so I'll just very briefly first talk about TrueSun. So I'm founder of TrueSun Energy Solutions. It's a company that focuses on solar rooftop solutions and also into project management consulting. So I started this company in 2018 after having various experience into the sustainability and climate change field from various aspects. I worked in the research field, I worked in investments, I have looked at this sector from consulting. And honestly, it's a totally different experience when you look at it from being an entrepreneur and actually running it. So I think I like to highlight, so the journey has been very exciting and there has been ups and downs, and yes, as Peter said, there's been a lot of challenges, and we have found our ways to make those challenges into opportunities and have reached here. So I would just like to highlight the two key challenges that I have faced. And I think first one being more external, where I have, as like Fiza said, that there have been times when I have been there in the client meeting, and the thing is, people don't take you that seriously. I think this is the biggest problem that I have faced while being in the negotiations with the client or while being at the site. At the site, usually at site, I'm probably the only woman who's there. So I think in a business which is so male-centric, people on the site are not even used to getting instructions from a woman. And I think that's been a challenge. But however, what we have focused on, what I personally have focused on, one, to definitely take care of your safety because you are at different sites at different locations. And secondly, be very persistent in what you're doing. I have focused on my deliverable. I have focused on giving detailing, and honestly, the clients which were there, which were not even very interested to have a conversation with me, but then to have a conversation with my male counterparts, have turned around over a period of time because I have personally spent time in detailing out things and bringing that sort of value addition. But what has really that I have to make that extra effort to make my presence felt. I think that is somewhere at times is very disheartening because you'll be at site and you know that somewhere you are superior in some of the thinkings than probably other people are. But then people would ideally just assume that you could probably sit back in office and just be doing writing some proposals and probably not be here and taking decisions about how the project needs to be designed and how the project needs to be executed. And this is one challenge I have faced, and how I've really addressed this challenge is that by spending more time with those colleagues and by giving those kind of inputs, and things have worked out in favor. So this is there. Then like I like to quote an example from this. We were executing a site in Mumbai. This was from one of the largest real estate developer in Mumbai. And again, the site had like 1,000 laborers and multiple engineers, and me being the only woman there. So I think working that thing out and designing the project and executing at the site was difficult, but we were able to do it. So this is one challenge where people do not take you seriously. Now, coming to the second challenge, which I have faced more organizational, is in terms of recruitment. So initially, we would have so by default of the sector we'll have 98% or 99% application coming from male. So this process was difficult because people would join, the engineers would join, but then eventually it was difficult for them to work with like a woman leading an organization. So I think we've had initially hires and leaving, and now we've developed a very robust system and we initially only we have a screening, and we have a wonderful team now. So I think these were the two main challenges that I have faced. So, and now I think going forward, we might be, in a process of raising funds, and I'm very confident that forums like Pfan and all, and I'm not going to be facing such sort of gender biasness. And thank you.
So I have a couple just real quick follow-ups. How many people, what's the head count for your company?
Right now, we're a team of 7 people.
Okay. And you worked at Tata Cleantech,
Yes.
as I recall. Is that correct? Having worked in that area and sort of worked with investors in that space, did that give you some confidence that you might not have had otherwise to be able to take this on?
Sorry?
So did it give you confidence, having worked on the financing side, which ultimately you have to get financing, to take on this challenge, which you might not have had if you had just come to it without that experience?
No, not really. I mean, so actually at Tata Cleantech Capital, what I was really doing is I was not more on the finance side. I was building their sustainability practice. So they had 2 lines of business. One was more of financing, and the second, they wanted to build up the sustainability space. So I was heading their sustainability space.
Okay. Yeah. And, thank you. And, the recruitment piece is just so important because you have to be proactive. I mean, just because of the numbers we heard about Achara mentioned, what was it, that 30% of Thai management positions or less are held by women. And, so that means that the CVs coming in are mostly men, and you really have to work proactively on that. I'd like to sort of pivot and we'll stay in India, but just move over to Starlene, who set up a company called Green Artha. And so Starlene, you and your business partner, Maya Chandrasekharan, recently set up this company, Green Artha, which is dedicated to creating a virtuous cycle of funding and commercialization support for climate startups. You both have experience developing a network of philanthropists, lenders, and other equity providers as partners. You also have a background in venture investment. You're also, I don't want to go on too long, but I think it's important to sort of to demonstrate you've got many different areas where you're working to make a difference. You're a climate editor for Business India and a founder of Cleantech Win, which is a network of over, this is old, 230 female clean tech professionals, maybe more now. Yeah. And you recently became a Pfan coach, and Green Artha has become a network partner, similar to Empower. And you've been doing a great job bringing projects into the pipeline. So thank you for that. So we've heard stories from Achara and Nitu, and are interested in hearing about the work you've been doing to strengthen the role of women in India's energy sector. So what do you see as the key challenges to making a difference? What are some of the initiatives that you and your business partner Maya, are working on to build up the capacity and influence women entrepreneurs in the energy space in India?
So I'll start by saying one of the things that Maya and I both try to bring to the table is we both have experience both as investors and entrepreneurs. So we really try to balance the ideas of how do you think about a company's growth as well as its capital needs. But along those same lines, Maya and I both have experience supporting women within the larger ecosystem. As a woman who was working in the climate and clean tech space, I used to hear all the time that I was the only woman. And very often at conferences, I was the only woman. And to avoid manels, I was often asked to speak on sometimes 2 or 3 panels at a conference. And sometimes even after I explained that I had no knowledge of a topic, I would still be encouraged to speak on it because I was the only woman. And when I gave a list of 3, 5, 7 other extremely well-qualified women who were actually experts in that topic, I was often told, well, we don't know if that woman, we don't know if she's an expert, so can you just do it? Can she tell you what to say? And that was sort of the impetus for starting the Clean Tech Women's Innovation Network, which is, yes, now over 250 women who are working in different areas of climate and clean technology, some as innovators in the startup sense, some as innovators in climate finance, some as innovators in climate policy, and some even as innovators in climate communications. And really, I think the idea, you know, when I look at it, is I very often saw that women were not at conferences at the same level. They weren't given the same access to resources because they weren't networking in the same ways. They wouldn't be shared, you know, reports wouldn't be shared, opportunities wouldn't be shared. And the other thing I knew from my own work was that there was a profound number of women that were actually doing really great work. Many of the organizations that we were working with had women in the number 2 spot. Many of them had numbers of women that were, you know, doing great quality work, whether in finance or policy, or in operations or whatnot. And so starting the network was really the starting point of my really focusing on, you know, how do you engage women more and give them more access to resources. After starting Clean Tech Win and creating this platform for women to share resources and to network, I also helped Shell Foundation design a program that became the Powered Accelerator, and have been a mentor for that program. I'm a mentor for the Climate Launchpad acceleration programs for women. Maya, my partner, runs a Women in Investing network, and we do work within that network to sensitize around what are the challenges for women in achieving finance. And just going back to some of the comments that Peter Story had made earlier in the day about women having more trouble raising. When women do raise, they actually provide better returns. And that is something that we don't talk about often enough. And I think that part of that is the sensitization of investors, but part of it is also that very often women are much more conservative in terms of how they think about their business, how they think about risk, how they think about finances, and therefore what stories they're telling about what they're going to accomplish. Whereas a lot of times, men will spin great stories about what they're doing with full disregard for what does that look like from a finance perspective, or what does that look like from a risk perspective. And I think that trying to create some commonality in terms of how we're thinking about encouraging men and women to discuss their business is important. And some of that we can say is sensitizing women to, you know, what is it that investors expect. But I think some of it is also really this piece around sensitizing investors to understand what is the difference in terms of how women think about business and how women pitch their businesses and what that means for their longer term operations. When women are giving more conservative numbers and a more conservative pitch, investors probably need to be taking less of a haircut, which they don't often think about doing. And so I think that that would be a few of the things that we're doing right now to support women in the sector.
Thank you so much. That's a great overview, and it's really amazing to see how much you've oriented yourself around mentoring and building up others. It's really you're a great example. And doing exactly what Fiza was talking about, creating space for women entrepreneurs. Now we're gonna go to the token male on the panel. We had to have someone, actually, I don't know why I'm moderating this, but we couldn't find a woman moderator, just kidding. In all seriousness, Robert Crabel is the Chief Investment Officer of the Impact Investment Exchange and has some really interesting experience and stories to tell us. But again, this is just a teaser in a sense. We're getting initial stories, and we can follow up with questions for a few minutes after this round. And also, I noticed some questions about, can you get assistance? Can you help us? The general answer to those is you can contact Nancy or myself or Parimita if you have questions about engaging with either Empower in the case of Parimita or Pfan. And we'll try to answer some questions. So Robert, IIX describes itself as a pioneer in impact investing and a global leader in sustainability. You work on financial solutions that help women, the environment, and underserved communities to gain value and have a voice in the global market. Your mission is to, quote unquote, create 1 billion sustainable livelihoods by 2030. Can you briefly describe IIX's work with high impact enterprises, your experience with Pfan, and your focus on women empowerment and climate change? And obviously you can't do all of that in depth in 3 minutes, but just give us a flavor and why sort of IIX is oriented towards women empowerment.
Sure, great, thanks. As you described, gave a very good high-level overview of IIX. Everything we do is focused on impact investment here in the region, mostly South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands. We work both as an advisor and as an investor. So as an investor, we're investing in companies that have strong financial potential, but also strong positive impact on both society and the environment. And as an advisor, we're working with those same types of companies to help them raise capital from other impact investors. So we typically provide technical assistance to high potential organizations to help them become investment ready, help them prepare for the process of raising capital. And then we connect them to investors, both through our own network. We have an online private placement platform called Impact Partners, but also through a wider network of funds and foundations and family offices. We have in that model, we've had the privilege to be a partner for Pfan and a coach to projects that they have been working with through the process that I think Peter Story described earlier. And we've been, our first engagement went back, I want to say 8 years ago, when we mentored several companies that were participating in the AFSEF pitching round. And it's been I've got to say, our engagement with Pfan has been a great process, both, I think, hopefully for the companies we've mentored, but for ourselves as well. We have, in particular, there's one company in the first batch that we mentored in the clean energy access sector, a company operating in Bangladesh in the peer-to-peer energy sharing space, where they're working to connect in remote off-grid villages. They're working to connect homes that have solar home systems with homes that do not have solar home systems so that they can share and trade electricity among those homes. We started working with that organization through the Pfan mentoring process when they were still a startup, frankly, before they'd even incorporated their business. And we've continued to work with them till today. In fact, as of today, we've advised them on raising capital several times in their business. And I sit as a board member on their company. So it's been a very positive experience for us. You mentioned, Peter, that women empowerment and climate action are two of our 3 pillars. Community, investing in underserved communities is a third. What that means is we're trying to bring a gender lens to everything we do. That doesn't mean we only invest in businesses that are founded by women or that are empowering women, but that we always try to take that into account. We always try to be mindful of that when we're investing. Some of the products that we do have, some of our investment products are specifically designed only to invest in businesses that have a strong positive impacts on women empowerment, particularly our Women's Livelihood Bond series. But we try to be mindful of that in everything we work on. And we frankly love working in the clean energy access area, both because it has very clear environmental benefits, very clear social benefits, and because we find that women are so often the beneficiaries of the clean energy projects that we're working on. So I'll stop there and look forward to taking further questions.
That's great. Thank you so much, Robert. As always, we have a time constraint, but I'd like to manage it this way. We've got questions coming in, so we'll do sort of a lightning round, like real quick responses, and I'll pick some and then direct them to either whoever is interested or to a specific person. So this is great because we're getting the audience engaged now. So here's this one for Nitu. Do you have any tips or tricks to make your male counterparts more comfortable with your presence when you're on site or in the field? And again, just give a quick response of no more than a minute, and then we can move on and cover other questions as well. Nitu. You're muted again.
Yeah, I think over my journey, the first tip that I have so it's important to manage their egos. I think so that is important. And while you're telling these people to execute the work, and so this is what, so you have to be very calm and composed and just focusing. I think that's the biggest thing that I can tell is that I have tried to manage their egos. Okay.
As a male, I can relate to that. Sorry. Well, no, that's a great answer. Look, that's sad but true, I think.
That is sad but true, but that, yeah. I mean, I have to do that to get so you could, that you are leading it and you could give your instructions and command it, but unfortunately, maybe the work will not get done, or it will not get done the way you are really expecting it to be done. Yeah. So at times I have to put my sort of the attitude or behavior I have, and I have to take a step back and focus on getting it executed, focus on moving ahead and getting it done. And then I need to be with these people for long, meaning I have associates, I have partners. Unfortunately, all are male. And and I think one thing also I've seen, the detailing that probably a women put in, I don't know, for me, I feel the detailing that I put in and getting that sort of detailing executed again requires you to be, be peaceful and managing.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a question, and I'm even going to ask Fiza, and this may be, I don't know if this will be the last question, but this is a really good question. It's from Lori Navarro. And I'm going to ask all of the women on the panel and Fiza to answer this maybe in a minute or less, because it's a great question. So to the women entrepreneurs, when you decided to walk the path of a women entrepreneur, what do you think was the major support or push that you got that made you face the challenges before you and decide to sort of continue on? So I'll give you, since you're the keynote, Fiza, I'll let you answer that one first, and then we'll just, in your experience, can you just sort of react to that question?
So what was the major push, huh? I think the major push was being the only woman on a table, being the only woman in a room, because that made me feel that I'm not just I don't just have to justify myself and my professional competence, but I have the entire womanhood behind me. If I fail, I'm making any other woman entering the industry fail, because I'm going to set a perspective, I'm going to set a benchmark. So it became like I was fighting just not for myself, but for all the women behind me and after me. I think that was what kept me going, because I had to make a mark.
Yeah, for some people that might be too much pressure, but obviously you persevered. Achara, was there an event that happened or something that sort of made you feel like I have to go ahead, and even though it's tough, I have to sort of push through and make a breakthrough?
Yes, for my point, I think about the survival of the business. Due to I am an entrepreneur, so I have to take care of our business, our staff, and because of this is our work, our passion, so we have to drive it as much as possible in our highest effort to win it. If not, maybe we can lose the business and maybe we can lose our life. So it is quite a high bet. So this is a push for my big venture, I think.
Yeah, and I have to say, on a personal note, I was showing the video, the Pfan video, to my wife, and my wife is a pretty strong woman, stronger than me for sure. um, and she knows how to treat my ego, Nitu, just so. But so she saw you in the video, and you're like directing man around. You're looking at a condenser and pointing to this. She said, "Wow, she's really great." Because my wife actually she runs a foundation and she ran a high school, and there aren't. I mean, I guess in education there are probably more leaders than in general business. Okay, next over to you, Starlene. Inflection point or a point where you just said, this really is going to fire me up to push through.
So I grew up with a dad who was an entrepreneur, and around the age of like 4 or 5, a neighbor told me I couldn't be the president of the United States because I was a girl. And my dad told me I could do anything I wanted to in life. I'd just have to work twice as hard to get half as far. But through my own experience, I really found that in developing my skills and developing the networks around me, that was not a challenge. I didn't doubt myself when I became an entrepreneur. When I moved into the climate space, I was a little bit concerned because I didn't have a technical background, but I did have somebody who was very supportive and said, Starling, you don't have to be afraid of like the electrical plugs in India. You'll only have to ever plug your computer in. But the businesses here really need a lot in terms of like understanding business support and business model and how to talk to customers, and you have that ability. And I think that in each of these cases, I think that the point I would pull out, and this is maybe a challenge for Peter and Robert and some of the other men, is that there really is a value in creating support for the women that you see coming up through the ranks and being mentors for them. And then I think for the women that are involved, it's great to achieve, but it's also important to support the other women that are coming up behind you and make space for them. So those would be my points.
Okay. We're going to push the boundaries here because I think Paramita and I can do our closing in like a couple minutes each. So there's another question here. I mean, there are some process questions, but again, one quick round, and maybe we'll just do 30-second lightning round. How do you manage the imposter syndrome as women are sometimes chosen as a token female? And that's a very common thing that you read about in management, in any management, and especially among women, because you get to a certain level and like, do you really know how to do this? And no, you don't. You have to learn, but you have to pretend that you know. So let's just go quick lightning round on that, and then we'll wrap up the panel. So Fiza, we'll start with you again.
The imposter syndrome, yeah. I think I think it really starts from the individual. I'm sorry, you said 30 seconds, yes. But I realized that, as Neetu just mentioned as well, it took us much harder to establish our professional competence than the men on the table, because we were questioned more. Anything, a man could go wrong as well, but then that the entire gender and race and ethnicity is not questioned there. But when we go wrong, it just questions are sitting on that table altogether. So I think we had to really work hard. We have to really work hard on our professional competence and weigh everything we say, everything we do, every project we launch, and try to work towards making it a success. There's a lot of pressure on that, yes. But only professional competence is the solution.
Yeah, and as Starlene said, I mean, it's not necessarily true, but people think that way. Work twice as hard to get half as far. It is interesting. I don't know if you've read Sheryl Sandberg's biography called, I think it's called Lean In. She's the COO of Facebook, and I was shocked to read how much she felt imposter syndrome, and she's one of the most competent females in management. Okay, so Starlene, 30 seconds on imposter syndrome.
I think that any great leader always has to continue learning and continue growing. So when you're feeling imposter syndrome, just remember that so does everybody else if they're going to be a good leader, and use it as an opportunity to grow. And always try to have that sense of needing to stretch and grow, and embracing the opportunities that are coming up in front of you, because you will become a better leader if you do.
Yeah, and that's very well put, because it's important to know what you don't know. Otherwise, you can't learn. Really well said. Achara, do you want to share anything on this?
I think first of all, you have to know your strength and your weakness, and sometimes you can develop your strength better and better. And sometimes if you feel like that, maybe you come to be with yourself and try to work from your inner side. That okay, what can I do and what I cannot do at this time, and develop yourself on your strength and your support side. And sometimes if you get very weak, you can maybe get a survey around, and maybe you can get better from not only from your job. Yes, for the inspiration. Yeah.
Thank you. And Nitu?
So I don't have much to add here, but I'll again say that you focus on your strengths. And I think my colleagues, counterparts have already said that you have to focus on your strengths, you have to believe in yourself. And yes, there will always be that little extra effort that you'll be making to make your presence felt.
Right. And as Fiza said, when you're the only woman in the room and you have imposter syndrome, there's sort of extra pressure, and the expectations are not the same. Well, with that, I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your stories briefly. I hope I encourage people to connect with you. We will answer all the questions and send this out in the Q&A report. With that, I'd like to thank you. You can turn off your video, stick around, because we'll all come back on at the very end. And I'd like to hand it back to Nancy.
Thank you, Peter. So I hope you from the audience enjoy the interaction with Pfan developers and investors. So that wrap up the first session of the program today. I'd like to bring you to the fourth session that focusing on the next step, how to apply for Pfan, and before we sign off with the closing remarks. So you have heard, and by now I hope that you learn a little bit about Pfan from Peter's story and Peter Dupont. And you might now wonder how to apply for Pfan services. So in the next 5 minutes, I break down a little bit on what kind of project that we are supporting, and how to apply for Pfan. So as Peter mentioned before, we support the projects that are focusing and provide solutions for clean energy and climate change. So for clean energy sectors, we support projects that provide solution sourcing energy from renewable sources. So either from biomass, biogas, wind, hydropower, or solar or ocean. We also support projects that provide solution to reduce the adverse impact of climate change and climate related risk. It could be could come from agricultural, tourism. Those projects could be from forestry or waste management, or even water and sanitation. Of course, we also, Pfan will not be able to support the projects in the following sectors, notwithstanding their climate benefits. Those projects that doing business in nuclear or burning waste or gas, or using carbon capture and storage technology, or those projects that will cause in voluntary resettlement and economic displacement, or affect critical habitats or cultural heritage and or sites, or using pesticides or chemical, or using child labor or force or traffic people, children. So we at Pfan, we provide support for projects from 9 countries in Southeast Asia, and 8 countries from South Asia. And we support the project that's seeking in investment with the raising funding from $1 million to up to 50 million. Of course, we also have exception for projects that provide solution in the area of energy access and rural electrification. For instance, like clean cook stoves or solar home system or mini grid in remote areas. For this project, we support those that seeking funding from 500,000 up to 50 million. And when we mention about investment, and most of the time people misunderstand that, you know, Pfan would provide funding or invest into the business of the company, but actually we support the company to improve their business and financial models and help them ready to talk to investors and get funding from investors. So we don't provide funding. So we support any legal business entities. We also support NGO as long as the project proposal has at least passed the pilot test and going to the commercial phase and starting getting revenue from the business. So for the evaluation criteria, we have about 9 criteria that we're looking for when in the project proposal. So the highest score will go to the management team and organization. And the rest we will look into, we give a score to the business and financial models, the strategy for risk, and the benefits of for environment and for social and environmental benefits of the proposal. So it will add up to 100 scores. So for Pfan, what to expect when you submit the project to Pfan? So basically, the project will go through 3 stages, but depend on the maturity of the project. Sometimes the mature project will only go to through 2 stages and go straight to investment facilitation. So when you apply to Pfan, you will go through 3 different stages. So stage 1 is action plan. So you will be assigned with a coach who has expertise in the sector, in the area of your projects, and you will work with your coach or advisor to develop a detailed action plan to get your project or your business ready to meet investors. And then it comes to the next stage called project development. And here you again continue working with your coach to improve your business plan and financial model, and get your investment pitch ready. For those project that mature and ready for investor introduction, we'll skip this stage and go straight to the investment facilitation, where your project is ready to be introduced to the investor, and the coach will support you through investor introduction and support you in investment negotiation. So we also provide guidelines, so don't be panic. It sounds complicated, but if you go to our website, there's a detailed guidelines to help you how to go through, prepare for your project proposal preparation and your financial model. And of course, if you have any question or you encounter any difficulties, you always can contact me or my colleague, Colin Prouillard, who is based out in Vienna, to support you with the application. And we also have country coordinators in 10 countries, and you all depend on where your projects are. You can contact them, and all their contact details are here. Yeah, feel free to email them or call them, email them to talk with them about the project application. So that wrap up my presentation about how to apply for Pfan. So that's almost go to the an hour and a half of the event. I'd like to invite Peter and Parimita back to the screen to provide some final words before we sign off.
Parimita, why don't you go ahead? You go first.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for all those detailed informations. And wow, what an interesting session, panel discussion that what we had. And I will bring 3 points. One is, whenever we talk, we interact with potential women entrepreneurs or those who have their startup already in place. They generally ask about 2 things. One is, how can they build their confidence? How can they follow the path? And how can they get the access to different resources and informations? And how can they get themselves linked to different networks? So those are the kind of questions that what we have been hearing from our potential entrepreneurs. And I'm glad that all our panelists, including FISA, had brought upon lots of points. And I'm sure these kind of confidence building interactions would help the women entrepreneur to continue their journey and succeed. And I also believe that this is a very good peer-to-peer learning session, so which is excellent. The second point, what I also wanted to mention here is, this is the first webinar what we are doing. So maybe we can have series of webinars, what we can do depending upon the kind of requirement and expectations from our participants. So that's one message that both Pfan and Empower would like to give to our participants, that we may continue with more number of webinars and bringing experts and have peer-to-peer learning sessions. The third point, what I would like to say is, of course, within Empower, I have already mentioned that we are working with different stakeholders, and our role is more as in creating the enabling environment to see how entrepreneur can sustain their business and how government can scale up this kind of interventions on a long-term basis. But this will not happen in one day. And we also want to bring the women entrepreneurs from the group of climate vulnerable group into a agent of change into that segment or group. And if we need to do that, Empower alone cannot do it. And it will not also happen automatically. We need multi-stakeholder interactions, we need partners, we need multi-dimensional discussions. So with this regard, we are extremely happy to have our Pfan as our strategic partners to bring their expertise, to bring their network and help the entrepreneur in facilitating the kind of requirement and expectation that they have. So we are really happy to have this strategic partnership, and we are looking forward for more interactions with other networks, with other stakeholders and take the challenge as a community to and take it to the next step. So with this, I will thank all of you. And if you want to know more about, I will just put it in the chat box, our websites and detail on that. And please get in touch with Peter or Nancy or myself or my colleague Annette and Babu for any of the information related to Empower or Pfan support. With this, I will stop here. Thank you so very much to everyone.
Thank you. And wow, what a panel, and what great messages from Fiza, the panelist, and from you, Paramita. In closing, I wanted to just reflect that, Pfan, we're very transactional because we need to be. I mean, we work on projects. We don't provide technical assistance in the regular sense. We don't work on policy. We don't work on enabling conditions. And that's our strength, but in a way it's a weakness, and we have to compensate for that weakness. So what we do is we take people on the Pfan journey, entrepreneurs on the Pfan journey, and that's what Nancy just laid out. Action plan, working on developing the business plan and the financial plan, and then developing a pitch and reaching out to investors. That process can take 6 months, it can take a year, it can take 18 months. And as I said earlier, we're on the side of the entrepreneur, and we are looking for commercial projects. We rarely take projects where there is not a customer or there are not some sales or prospect of sales. But that doesn't mean that we're not, we want to get as many projects as possible to succeed. So we often refer projects to partners if they're not really ready, if they don't have a business plan. So that could be Empower, it could be another organization that does that in India or Bangladesh. But we want all companies to succeed. And once companies come in, we work with them on multiple rounds of fundraising. I think IIX and SoulShare is a really great example of how IIX has taken this business, which basically does, turns solar rooftops into mini grids. It's a great technology, and they stayed with them, and that sort of persistence and connection is really important. And in closing, I'd like to sort of pivot back to, how we can be better at our job of improving gender diversity. I mean, in the way we recruit coaches, we recruit management in Pfan for a start, but also in the way we work with people like Fiza and people like Starlene and her partner Maya, the way we showcase people like Achara or Nitu, and really, we are only as strong as our network, as Paramita said it, having partners who can help us identify and bring companies into Pfan coaching. And I've said this many times to the 12 country coordinators, you each have a great network, but you need to get partners in country to help get out the word. So with that, we plan on building on this webinar, working with Empower to help find projects that are pre-commercial to become commercial and help them to get financing and realize their dreams. I think this webinar will be fantastic for people to watch, really thoughtful lessons and experiences shared by the panelists as well as Fiza. So with that, I'd like to thank all of you for sticking around, and I'd like to ask all of the speakers and panelists to turn on their video, and we'd like to do this at the end. Everyone just say goodbye, and we really appreciate you spending an hour and a half with us. And with that, it's a wrap. Thank you. Bye-bye.